Hey, everybody. Welcome to Battleground Podcast, the show where we never retreat and never surrender. I'm Sean Parnell. I'm your host. So I want you to imagine something. You're 22 years old. You're on a European trip with your friends who are also in their 20s. You're on a train. You hear gunshots. You emerge from your cabin, and you see a terrorist holding an AK-47. What would you do in that situation? Would you run? Would you hide? Would you fight? Many of us probably aren't quite sure. So this week I've got an amazing guest who can talk about exactly how he reacted in that scenario, and his name is Alek Skarlatos. He's an amazing guy. He is the Paris train attack hero, he and his friends. He wrote this incredible book called The 1517 to Paris. That book was also a movie written and directed by Clint Eastwood. He was the star of that movie. Alek Skarlatos also ran for Congress twice. And oh, by the way, he's only 30 years old. He's lived a pretty amazing life. Oh, and we also talk about his time on Dancing with the Stars, where he placed third. So he's done it all, and like I said, he's only 30 years old, but this episode is one of my favorites because the guy has lived just an extraordinary life. And so I hope that you enjoy it. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Alek. Hey, Alek, welcome to the show, man. It's great to have you. It's great to catch up. Just for people who are watching and listening, I've known Alek since 2020. We both ran congressional races together in swing districts. Alek ran in Oregon. Obviously, I ran in Western Pennsylvania. But it's great to see you, man.
Yeah, good to see you again. Been a while.
It has. So just so everybody's tracking, you're out there on the West Coast, so I'm not sure if a lot of people on the East Coast are tracking your story, although you have kind of a national story. So I'm pretty sure that they are. But so you're a National Guard guy, right? You deployed as part of the National Guard. You come home, you stop a terrorist attack on a train. You wrote the book 1517 to Paris, right?
Yep. Filmed
a movie with Clint Eastwood. And really, I mean, Alek, I always feel sheepish and stupid when people say this to me, but you really are a hero, man. You saved a ton of innocent lives out there.
I don't know.
You got all sorts of. Well, it's true. It's true. If you weren't there to stop that guy with a gun, how many people you think would have died on that train?
I don't know. At least a handful. I mean, he was having some issues with the gun, but I always tell people I feel like I would qualify as a hero if we were in like a cafe or something and I had the option to run away, but we didn't. But we didn't have that option. We were in the front of a train going on like 150 miles an hour, and he was behind us, so we had no exits. We couldn't jump off. We couldn't even hide, really. So our only option was to get after the guy, and luckily it all worked out. I mean, there's a lot of things that went into it, which I can get into later if you want, but I mean, we were just happy to survive. We were just doing it to save ourselves and to save each other.
I mean, Alek, all cards on the table. I didn't intend to get into that conversation as fast as we did, but since we're there, I mean, the story garnered global attention, and I remember watching it unfold on the news thinking like, that's freaking amazing. Two Americans, I think you had it wasn't just you, two Americans and a Brit, right?
It was, so it was me, my best friend from childhood, Spencer, since I'd known since I was 5. He was in the Air Force. And then our other friend, Anthony, who's a college student, he joined us for the trip as well. And then, a French-American dual citizen was one of the guys that initially tried to stop him and got shot in the neck. And then the other guy, a British gentleman, helped us tie him up at the end of it.
I mean, it's crazy. And obviously, you're super humble about it. But it was a global story. You won all sorts of awards. I mean, And then we got to talk about this. You get invited to be on Dancing with the Stars, where you place third, which I got to hear all about that.
Yep.
But like, put me in your shoes. Like, how did you even know, or when did it become apparent to you that this guy was a threat? I mean, obviously, if the guy's toting around an AK-47, it's pretty obvious. But he didn't walk onto the train with that, right?
No. So what had happened was, we were just sitting there. Spencer was on the aisle seat next to me. We now call the aisle seat the combat seat. But he was on the aisle seat. I was on the window seat. And he was asleep. And I was just playing on my phone. And I just hear what sounds like a gunshot and breaking glass come from behind us. And I really didn't know what to think of it at the time, to be honest. Like, I put my head up and I was like, that's weird. And then I see a train employee running away from the noise at a full sprint, which is also unusual to see on a train, running to the front of the train. And so I turn back to see what he's running away from, and I see a shirtless guy with an AK-47. I mean, very, very stereotypical terrorist vibe. And I turn around, duck behind the seats. Spencer woke up at that point, turned around to see what I was looking at with such a scared look in my eye, and ducked down next to me. And pretty much before we could even think of anything, I hit him on the shoulder and I say something like, "Let's go," or "Go get him," or something like that. And without hesitation,
man, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Without hesitation, he got up and tackled the guy and went from there.
Without hesitation. So Spencer gets up out of a dead sleep and goes and tackles this dude?
Pretty much.
Did he sleep through the gunshot, or did you wake him up?
No, he slept through the gunshot. He had Bose headphones on, with noise canceling and all that. And so I think what probably stirred him out of his sleep was the train employee running by at a full sprint. And then, he woke up, realized something was going on, turned around to see what I was looking at, saw what I saw. And again, I just hit him on the shoulder and said, "Let's go." And he immediately took off after the guy, tackled him, made it all the way to him, tackled him. I honestly didn't even know that he had left at first, because I was like, I'm ducked down in between like these two seats, like looking back. And so I'm like peeking between these two seats, and I'm like, "Spencer, let's go." And then like before I know it, I see him cross like my path of vision towards the terrace. And I'm like, "Oh shoot, he left."
Oh my God.
I was like, I meant like, let's go in a second after he kills a few people, has to reload, maybe gets a little bit closer. But he just full on runs at the guy, probably, I don't know, 10, 12 yards away, makes it all the way to him, tackles him. I follow him. Spencer was working on getting him in a chokehold. And so I pick up the AK-47 that's on the ground. I try to shoot the terrorist with it, but it's on safety. Before I can figure out what to do with it, the terrorist then has a handgun out, and he's trying to line it up with Spencer's head, who's behind him, choking him. And so I dropped the AK, pry the handgun out of his hands, hit him in the face a few times with that. And then Spencer yells, "He's got a knife, he's got a knife, get him off me." And he had pulled out a 6-inch extendable, breakable box cutter and was cutting Spencer on the back of the neck, trying to get his carotid, and actually came pretty close. So Spencer kicked him off of him. At that point, Anthony had joined us, and all three of us were just kind of punching him, kicking him, doing whatever we could do to survive and not get injured. And then finally, I still have the handgun, so Spencer and I kind of get control of him, and I put the handgun to the back of his head, and I say, "Stop resisting, stop resisting." And, it's a single action Browning high power, so I see the hammer's cocked back, I take it off safety, and I pull the trigger. Nothing happens. Cycle it, realize that magazine was not even in the gun, it was empty. And what had actually happened was, before we got involved, a French-American dual citizen and another Frenchman were waiting to use the restroom. And the terrorist was in the restroom for so long that, they thought something was going on, or maybe there was something wrong with him. And finally he comes out of the restroom after being in there for like 15 minutes. And these two guys see the terrorist with the AK-47 across the front of his body and all that. And so the Frenchman grabs the terrorist by the neck like this, facing him. And then Mark, the French-American dual citizen, goes to grab the AK-47, and they start fighting. And again, this is before we knew what was going on. Basically, after a struggle, Mark ends up getting the AK-47 from the terrorist, runs to the front of the train. The terrorist pulls the handgun out of his waistband, accidentally drops the magazine when he does so, shoots one round, hitting Mark in the neck, which was the gunshot and breaking glass that we initially heard, and then the train employee running away from that as well. Because the train employee went over there to break them up because he thought it was a regular fight, and that was how the terrorist was able to pull the handgun out, and that was how Mark was able to get away with the AK. But anyway, so he shot him, gun cycled like it was loaded because there was no magazine to hold it back, and so by the time I got it, I thought it was loaded. Turns out it wasn't, so we throw the gun. Spencer puts him in another chokehold on the opposite side of the aisle. I pick the AK-47 back up, hit him in the face a few times with it, and then I watch him go unconscious from Spencer's chokehold, and Spencer's pretty upset with him, so he's continuing to choke him even though the terrorist is unconscious. And then I look over and I see Mark, who again we didn't know at the time, didn't know what happened. He's trying to stand up in the middle of the aisle with blood squirting out of his neck. And once again, being the good friend that I am, I say, Spencer, go get that guy. And to be fair, Spencer was an EMT in the Air Force, so I knew that was right up his lane, And so he throws the terrorist on the ground, crawls over, puts two fingers in Mark's neck wound and stops the bleeding. And I took the AK-47. Chris, the British gentleman that you mentioned, he offered to help us tie him up or to watch the terrorist. So I just say, keep an eye on him, make sure he stays unconscious. I take the AK-47, I take it off safety and go to cycle it because I think it's not loaded since no one got shot with it to my knowledge. And a round ejects from the chamber, lands on the seat next to me. And I can tell by looking at it that there's a dent in the back of the primer. And I pick it up, and sure enough, there's a solid strike in the back of the primer. So at some point, whether it's Spencer, or Mark, or someone, he had tried to fire the AK-47 and it just, bad ammunition, bad, cheap, old Russian ammunition. And so we got incredibly lucky there as well. I took the AK-47, checked the rest of the train to make sure there was no other terrorists or wounded passengers. I come back, unload everything. The British guy had hogtied the terrorist, which was actually pretty convenient for us. And then I walk over and I help Spencer with Mark's medical care, gather up all the weapons and ammunition for the next 20 minutes until we get to the train station. But to be honest, I didn't think Mark was going to survive. He had lost a tremendous amount of blood. But we made it to the train station. He survived. Terrorist was fine. I mean, everything worked out the way it was supposed to.
God, Alec, were you worried at any point that there were other terrorists on the train and he was just the opening attack?
Theoretically I was. That's why I took the AK-47 and loaded it. That was kind of when our training started to kick in, was in the aftermath. Security is always the first priority of work.
Absolutely right.
Yes, this guy got shot, but Spencer's handling that. This guy's handling the terrorist. I'm going to go check the train and make sure nothing else is going on. And I took the AK-47 because I didn't, frankly, trust the French to handle it. And I didn't just want to leave it there. I thought that there was the possibility of another terrorist, but, I wasn't hearing any gunshots. I wasn't hearing any other screaming or anything. So my main concern was just that he had killed a few people before he got to our train car. And that's really what I was going to check, make sure there was no other people bleeding out that we weren't paying attention to.
How much of your reaction do you attribute to your training in the Army or the Air Force? I know you said it didn't really kick in until after, but Spencer might have charged the guy first, but you weren't far behind him. And so I got to believe that your training took over almost as soon as you heard that gunshot. Alec, as soon as you heard that gunshot, you weren't running away. You were looking towards the threat to see what was going on.
Well, to be honest, the military doesn't train you for stuff like that. They don't train you to get in engagements when you're unarmed and the other person has an AK-47. So for that, I got to chalk it up to just the fact that I've known Spencer my whole life, since we were 5 years old. We were neighbors growing up. Our families are still very close to this day. And our other friend, Anthony, we'd known since we were in middle school. So I think it was just really growing up in this day and age, we joked about stuff like that. If there was ever a shooter at school, we'd tackle him, or what would you do? Just talking about theoreticals, even though, I think none of us really took it seriously. when you just know someone for that long, when the chips are down, you know they're going to have your back, and that's pretty much what happened. You know, like Spencer ran at the guy. He knew I was going to have his back. I knew that, you know, the terrorist wasn't going to be able to kill all three of us, so hopefully one of us would be able to stop him, you know. And I mean, again, selfishly, we weren't thinking about the rest of the train. We were just thinking about saving our own lives and saving each other. And it all worked out the way it was supposed to. I mean, like I said, we just known each other for so long. We're all on the same page. And then, yeah, the military training kicked in, you know, during the fight a little bit. Fortunately, I just bought my first AK-47 like 2 or 3 months prior. So I was familiar with how they worked. I owned 1911, so I knew how a Browning high power worked.
Wow.
You know, just a lot of little things that kind of went into not necessarily our reaction, but what happened. You know, Spencer did Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, so he was able to choke the terrorist unconscious fairly easily. You know, I had all the weapons the terrorist had, more or less. Spencer was an EMT. He was able to save Mark's life. You know, me being infantry, I knew that security was the first priority at work. Like all these little things in and out of the military that we just kind of grew up doing or knowing or learning just kind of came into play all at the right time.
What was going through your mind as all of that was unfolding?
I mean, honestly, I didn't really have time to think about anything. We didn't even have time to think or plan our reaction. And it's probably good that we didn't. I mean, we were just trying to stay alive. It was just focused on the task at hand. You know, like, get the gun, try to shoot him, get the other gun, hit him with it. Like, you know, it was just very responsive. I didn't really have time to think about anything until after he was already unconscious. And then I thought, okay, what should we be doing next? And that's when I took the AK-47, came back, checked on Mark's medical care. I'm like, he's lost a lot of blood. He's probably not going to make it. I'm going to cut his shirt off and look for other injuries. Spencer, of course, was keeping his, I think, carotid artery shut the whole time, you know, so he wouldn't bleed to death. But I mean, he had lost so much blood, I frankly didn't think he was going to make it. So it's a good thing Spencer had faith in him. But I didn't really reflect on anything until after things had calmed down. Anthony actually took a little cell phone video. I think right about the time I came back from checking the rest of the train and was unloading the weapons. And we were joking like immediately just about like, I was like, oh man, I tried to shoot him. And Anthony's like, he did. Like, I was just like, that's crazy. You know, like we were just talking like friends do about, holy crap, I can't believe this happened. And joking with one another, frankly, being a little bit too cavalier because Spencer is still holding this guy's neck wound shut. And we're just, you know, casually joking about it. I mean, you know, it's just kind of weird the different reactions people have from adrenaline. I mean, Spencer wanted to kill the terrorist, which is understandable. Anthony and I were joking about the entire situation immediately afterwards. While there's a guy bleeding to death who we didn't know if he was going to make it or not. I mean, everyone just kind of reacts differently to the adrenaline, and definitely the biggest adrenaline rush I've ever felt in my life, that's for sure.
Man, ain't that the truth? I mean, you know, having been in combat, like when you find yourself in situations like that, where someone's trying to kill you and you don't even know them, I found that, Alek, to be one of the most surreal and, I mean, I'll just say scary moments of being a young infantry platoon leader in Afghanistan. You know, just a personal anecdote from me. You know, I was in Eastern Afghanistan. First day we're there, we're getting shot at, and I'm thinking, oh my God, like these people want to kill me, and they don't even know who I am. They don't know anything about me. They just want me dead because I'm an American. And you're right. Like when that happens, I mean, I feel like something changes in you. Do you feel that way?
I don't really feel any different. To be honest, it just kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Almost gives you like a sense of confidence. Like I've done this one really hard thing. I have confidence in the rest of my life that I can do other hard things. You know, I'm not sure if I would have had the balls to run for Congress at 27 or however old I was the first time I ran for Congress had I not had that experience. And in a way, it's almost like nothing else gets me excited. Like I don't get an adrenaline rush from small things anymore. I wouldn't really say it's changed my personality or anything like that, but it's definitely given me an appreciation for life, you know, knowing we probably should have died that day. You know, you appreciate everything else going forward.
Do you still think about the attack?
No, not too often anymore. I mean, for a while there, probably like the first 2 or 3 years, I thought about it every day and had even like a little bit of diet PTSD, but kind of wore off. And now I really don't think about it anymore, to be honest.
When you said you thought about it every day, like what was that like for you? Like, and in what way did you think about it?
Not necessarily negative, but it was such a big part of our lives, between doing the book and the movie and everything. Like we had to think about it for a lot of reasons. And when it's something that's just like that, I don't want to say traumatic, but that crazy of a thing to happen to you, you do think about it. You're like, man, I shouldn't even, you'll just be driving along looking at how pretty the view is on the side of the road. And you're like, man, look at that river. Like I shouldn't even be alive to see this. I appreciate every day. Again, it's not all negative stuff necessarily, but you just you just kind of do by default. It's not like anything that you can help. I'm sure you thought about a lot of things that happened to you in Afghanistan for the first couple of years, and then it kind of mellows out.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. You're talking about the perspective on life that experience gave you. It sounds like, and how, like, one, I think you understand just how fragile life can be and how quickly it can all go away, but it also gives you an appreciation for maybe some of the beauty that's around you on a day-to-day basis. And I agree. What you said resonates with me, Alek, because, post-traumatic stress, of course, it can be really tough on people. I mean, I had it for a while after I got back from Afghanistan. And what I always used to say to people is like, I always used to worry about as a leader, the guy that didn't have it. Like when you go through something that's life-changing where you almost die, whether it's a car accident, combat, in your case, a terrorist attack, it's almost like if you're not affected by that in some way, are you even really human? I mean, it's a normal thing for human to be adversely affected by stuff like this, Yeah,
I mean, like I said, I think that affects everyone differently. I mean, some people, like I think Mark, the guy who got shot in the neck, he had some pretty bad PTSD from it, understandably. But again, I think just like adrenaline, it affects everyone differently. I mean, I know people who got PTSD from one traumatic event worse than, other people who are in combat, multiple tours, seeing multiple dead people, engagements, friends get killed, whatever. They have the same amount of PTSD, so you just never know how it's going to affect people. But yeah, I mean, like I said, honestly, like we were just happy to be alive. Like I don't think it really changed or affected any of us too deeply. We're all still pretty much the same people, which I'm kind of grateful for. But yeah, you do get a good appreciation for life, and I think I was only 22 when it happened, so it gave me a good perspective pretty early on, I think.
Man, 22 years old, and so you go. So okay, so you're a National Guard infantry guy, right? You're an E4 specialist. You stop this terrorist attack. All of a sudden, this. I mean, it sounds like. I mean, everything went right. Like lots of things could have gone wrong. Like even it's just God. It seems like a God thing to me. I mean, that's where I don't know what your faith is, but to me, like it's like, okay, you buy an AK-47, familiarize yourself with a rifle a few months before the attack. The AK-47 clearly fired. I mean, it sounded like something hit the primer on that round. It didn't fire. The handgun didn't have a magazine in it. It only had one round, right? If I'm understanding what you're telling me correctly. Mark gets shot in the neck. How he survives and that bullet doesn't hit his artery and he bleeds out on the train 20 minutes before you get to the next train stop is beyond me. I mean, I've seen people bleed out in combat a lot faster than 20 minutes after getting shot in the neck. It seemed like, do you feel like, oh my God, like, I don't know. I mean, do you feel like everything went right? It sounds like.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it was definitely a God thing, to be honest. I mean, there's not... Statistically, you can't really add up all of those different things that happened and just think that it's chance. I mean, like you said, just the odds of having a misfire on a primer, even with garbage Russian ammunition, is still pretty small. And like you said, the fact that Spencer was able to keep Mark alive after getting shot in the carotid artery, I mean, that's pretty incredible. Because he was legit bleeding out of his neck for probably 2 minutes before we even noticed it. So I mean, a lot of little things. I mean, again, like you said, we had the exact skill set needed to handle that situation. I mean, almost as if we had planned that it was going to happen, but obviously we didn't. And that's just all too long of odds for it to just be chance, in my opinion.
It's amazing. Just the AK-47 misfire alone to me is a god thing. It's like you can bury that rifle with a full magazine and a round chambered in the mud for a year. I've seen Afghans do it and pull it out, use it, and it fires. It works perfectly. And so...
Well, and the gun works perfectly. That's the thing. The gun did its job. It was just bad ammunition. So
that's crazy. That's crazy. Man, so you go from an E-Force specialist in the infantry. First of all, what are you doing on a train in Europe on your way to Paris? Is it like as a 22-year-old kid? What are you doing over there?
So we I had wanted to do a European vacation after Afghanistan, regardless. And so I was talking to a German friend of mine, and I mentioned it to Spencer because he was stationed in the Azores in Portugal for the Air Force, and I was like, you're basically already in Europe. I want to do this vacation. Like, let's plan a trip and at least meet up for part of it. And so I asked a couple of my friends in Afghanistan to go with us. None of them wanted to, so Spencer invited Anthony, and he was down. So Anthony and Spencer kind of did their own trip through the Mediterranean. I hung out with this German girl for a while, for about 10 days. And then we met up in Amsterdam, actually. And we were only together as a group for about 3 days in Amsterdam before we took the train to Paris when all this happened.
That's amazing. So, but by the way, a quick anecdote, a different experience between the Army and the Air Force, right? Like you were in Afghanistan, Spencer's stationed in Portugal.
Yep.
For God's sake. Air Force, God. It's a little bit different of a duty assignment there, but so you're on a European trip, you stop a terrorist attack, and all of a sudden, sorry, my little headphone fell out here, but all of a sudden you're swept up into what becomes a global story, Alek. And almost overnight, you're like a global hero, definitely a hero in America, and you're on every major news outlet in the country. What was that like?
I mean, we were pretty insulated from it at first, to be honest, because we were still in France. The first day, we stayed the night in a hotel and couldn't sleep. Spencer was in the hospital getting treated for his neck wound as well, because he got cut pretty bad on the back of his neck. And the whole thing just felt surreal for about like the first 48 hours, really. And so we all met up actually at the American Embassy in Paris. Columbia Sporting Goods flew all of our families out on their private jet at the drop of a hat to Paris to see us get the Legion of Honor.
Are you kidding me? That's amazing.
Yeah, they were really cool about it. And so we did all that. I went to the hospital with Spencer in Germany for a few days, and then I flew home probably 5 or 6 days after the terrorist attack. And then, came home, and honestly, we hadn't really realized what a news story it was until we got back to the United States. Because I thought, this will make some like local French news, and that'll be it.
Oh no!
And then we got home, and I realized that it was still a week later all over Fox News, and we were getting. I think I did an interview with Greta Van Susteren from Fox right when I got home. All three of us did like a sit-down interview with Megyn Kelly probably 2 weeks after the terrorist attack.
I remember that. I
got the offer to do Dancing with the Stars, which I did. We got to have dinner with Arnold Schwarzenegger, who kind of just advised us on our newfound fame, if you will, and whatnot. Yeah. A lot of cool experiences. And then, of course, writing the book and doing the movie with Clint Eastwood. I mean, it still doesn't even seem real.
All right, so let's go through some of this stuff one by one, because that's just way too much cool stuff to just gloss right over. Where to begin? So you get off the plane in America. what kind of welcome did you receive? Do you have people waiting for you when you got off the plane, or was it kind of chill?
It was the opposite of chill. They had actually closed down the entire terminal at Newark Airport, the entire baggage claim, and they had about probably 200 police officers there lining the terminal to greet me, which was super cool of them to do. I honestly did not expect that. And so it was the opposite of chill. And then I got in some black SUVs from Newark PD, and they took us to our hotel in New York.
So they took you to New York? Why'd you go to New York?
Because I had to do the Greta Van Susteren interview before I even went home. And
so you were booked on Greta. You were booked on Greta before you even landed stateside? Exactly.
I think my parents had agreed for me to do that in exchange for a plane ticket home.
Oh my God. So how do you handle all this? I mean, you're 22 years old. You're a world hero, a global hero, certainly a national hero. You receive a hero's welcome. You're doing national media. You've never done it before. How are you handling all of this?
I mean, I really wasn't. I mean, I was pretty awkward. If you watch any of the interviews or any of my interactions from back then, I was just like, cool, thanks, I appreciate it. And I just didn't know what to say or what to do. We were just doing what we had to do to survive, and I didn't really, I understood why people would make it into a big story, especially, 3 Americans on vacation in France stopping a terrorist attack. It is a cool story. But, I just didn't really understand why it was such a big deal, and I just definitely didn't know how to handle it. I mean, I was kind of awkward enough as it was, and then coming off of a 9-month deployment to Afghanistan where you're around the same people every day, and now I'm meeting new people, doing interviews and stuff like that. I mean, I did not have the social skills to handle it, but again, it all worked out. And actually, I think it was while I was in New York, before I even got home, that I got the offer from Dancing with the Stars, and that was actually a great experience too. But I mean, yeah, we were just doing it day by day. I thought it would be not a story after 2 weeks, and then we wrote a book, and I thought no one would read the book, and then I still don't think no one read the book, but we got the offer from Clint Eastwood to do the movie, and it just kept going and going and going, and I thought it would be a small story on local French media.
So, how did you get the offer from Dancing with the Stars, and when you got it, what was going through your head? You're like, I'm just an E-Force, I'm just a specialist in the infantry.
Well, I mean, I did kind of have to run it by the National Guard, but fortunately they were pretty cool with the whole thing. They were like, well, if it gets you good PR, it gets us good PR, so they let me do it. Initially, I thought the thing was kind of corny, and I was just like, I don't know if I want to do that. But I talked to actually a guy named Noah Galloway who did it the season before me.
Yeah.
And he was a really cool guy, and he basically said, yeah, it's a little corny, but it'll be good for you. And so I did it. And honestly, it was a lot of fun. It was really good for me, and I enjoyed it, and, no complaints there. And, it was actually just a lot of fun. I mean, a lot of good people do that show, even though it's in Los Angeles. A lot of the professional dancers are Mormon, so they lean a little bit conservative. So yeah, it was a good time. It was really fun. I enjoyed every minute of it. And again, it kind of set me up for, doing the book and the movie, getting a little bit used to how LA works, and, just working on my social skills as well. So yeah, no, it was a good time.
I mean, you were no slouch, man. You got 3rd place, right?
Yeah, I think it was a lot of sympathy votes, but
you're way too. You don't give yourself enough credit. I mean, if you sucked, you would have been voted off first, right?
Well, yeah, I suppose. But, it was people asking me if I'm a good dancer, and I say no because I still don't know how to dance. I got to learn one dance and then move on next week. It was not like we were learning how to dance. We were learning a dance. And there is a difference, but yeah, I mean, I got to meet a lot of cool people. Paula Dean, the celebrity chef, was on my season. She's a super nice lady. Nick Carter from the Backstreet Boys was on. Bindi Irwin, Steve Irwin's daughter, was on. She's incredibly nice. She actually won that season. So I got to meet a lot of interesting people. I mean, not just from Dancing with the Stars, but just over the course of the whole thing. I mean, we've been very lucky, that's for sure.
I mean, it sounds like a kind of unbelievable experience, and I don't know how the hell I would manage something like that. I frankly could never see myself doing anything like it, but I mean, you did it. You got third place. It's pretty damn amazing. And then you find yourself sitting around a dinner table with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yep. He's a cool guy too.
How does that happen? How does that even how is all this stuff? How are you finding out about all this stuff? Did you have like an agent or something like that? Or were you just getting emails?
Yeah, we had I think you'd call him a publicist. That kind of, I think, I'm not sure how we got in touch with him. I think maybe Arnold Schwarzenegger put us in touch with him. Or he put us in touch with Arnold Schwarzenegger. I don't remember which, but, yeah, we kind of had like a volunteer publicist who knew someone. I forget how we got in touch with him, to be honest, but he was kind of, putting all this stuff together, and he said, "Hey, Arnold Schwarzenegger wants to have dinner with you." And so we were like, for sure. And, we grew up on Arnold Schwarzenegger movies and Clint Eastwood movies, so it worked out perfect. And getting to meet him was really surreal because, we legit just went to his house and had dinner, did a couple reps in his home gym just to say we did. He talked. I just watched Pumping Iron when I was in Afghanistan, so like, I've watched stuff from this guy's entire career. We grew up on all of his action movies in the '90s, so it was really cool super down to earth. He's a really nice guy. I know he's maybe not the most aligned with us politically nowadays, but he's still a great person.
So what kind of advice did he give you without disclosing anything that he told you personally, but what was the gist?
Oh, just, normal stuff like, get a good agent, watch what you say, like basically take advantage of your 15 minutes of fame, to be totally honest, was more or less what he said. And again, we didn't really have any intent of doing that or not doing that. We were just kind of along for the ride. But that same publicist put us in touch with the book agency. And then that's when we wrote the book and were able also by chance to meet Clint Eastwood, and he did the movie. So again,
how long did it take you to crank out the book?
Oh God, like 6 months. It was pretty short. They wanted to get it out immediately. I think the book was probably out around the time of the 1 year anniversary. No, actually, I think around the 1 year anniversary, because I was in sniper school, I think, when it came out. And that would have been summer of 2016. So yeah, it was, crazy.
That's crazy. That's an insane turnaround, especially like if you're writing a book at that level. I mean, there's so much that goes into it, like getting it on the shelves, like talking to distribution networks, like putting together a marketing plan, cover design, actually writing the book, so many things happen behind the scenes. That's an insanely quick turnaround. And so the book comes out, Alek. How soon after the book did the movie come out?
Almost like a year and a half after the book, I think 2.5 years after the event. So also very quick turnaround. We met Clint Eastwood by chance at a awards show. We met him in the green room, and actually he wanted to meet with us. So we went back there, talked to him, and we're just kind of bullshitting about, whatever. And, I made a joke like, "Oh yeah, we just came out with a book. You should do the movie. Ha ha ha." And he's like, "Oh, send me a copy. You never know." And we're like, "Ha ha ha. Okay, whatever." And so Spencer, again, to his credit, followed up and mailed Clint Eastwood a book, and basically got a phone call 3 days later from Clint Eastwood himself saying, "I read it. Let's do it." And
are you kidding me?
Yeah. And again, all this was by chance. Like, we met Clint Eastwood by chance. We were joking about the book. Spencer sent him a copy anyway, just kind of like a shot in the dark. And he called us back and just said, like, "Let's do it." And pretty much Clint Eastwood runs his own studio, El Paso Productions. So when he wants to do a movie, like, that's the word. Like, if he wants it, it's done. So the second he said that let's do it, we met with them, signed a deal, started working on the script. making a lot of different little edits, what we were wearing that day, what exactly everyone did, what kind of weapons did the terrorist have, like all these little fine details going into our childhood even. So that was a lot of work, more than the book by far. And then about 10 days before the movie was set to start filming, they flew us down there and didn't really tell us why we were going down there. So we're like, oh shoot, the movie starts filming in 10 days. I bet we're going to meet the actors that are playing us, And so we get down there and Clint is just kind of talking about random stuff. Like he's got this little camera, this small Sony camera that he wants to shoot the train scenes on and blah, blah, blah. And he goes, let's get you guys on film real quick so we can see what you guys look like on camera. And we're like, okay, whatever. So he does that, because I think they do that a lot of times for reference with their actors. And so we get back inside and he's like, so how would you guys feel about doing it yourselves? And we're like, yeah, we'll kind of reenact it and show everyone what happened and, get the actors, in the right place and everything. He's like, no. How do you feel about you guys doing it? We're like, what do you mean? He's like, do you want to play yourself in the movie? We're like, okay. So that was also really unusual. But we agreed to play ourselves in the movie. And I think on the 2-year anniversary of the terrorist attack, August of 2017, we were in Venice filming our movie with Clint Eastwood. And that was probably the highlight of my whole life. We were so busy. We were so busy we forgot it was the 2-year anniversary. And then one of Clint's producers was like, you guys know it's the 2-year anniversary today? And we're like, no kidding. And it was already like 6 p.m. Like we had went the whole day and not even thought about it. And so then we had this little toast. And it was such a fun time getting to work with someone like Clint Eastwood every day. He's an incredible guy. And just the whole crew was super fun. And the whole process was just a blast.
So you starred as yourself in a major Hollywood motion picture with Clint Eastwood.
Major might be an overstatement, but it was a good, solid movie.
It's
Clint Eastwood movies all do pretty well. But yeah, it was a great experience, and all we cared about was the movie being accurate, and it was very accurate.
What kind of guy was Clint Eastwood?
Super cool. To look up to someone like that pretty much your whole life and then get to meet them is surreal enough, but to get to work with them for like 3 months, 4 months, almost every day, and have them like never let down that image that you built up in your head once is pretty impressive. He's just a really funny, when we filmed the movie, he was 88 and super sharp, super funny. He was just like, he'd hang out just like, we're talking now. Just super laid back, super funny, really down to earth. And, my favorite Clint Eastwood story, I'll be quick, but my favorite Clint Eastwood story is we were in Venice right around the time of the 2-year anniversary, filming there. And it was kind of the off season in Venice. So we go to this gym in Venice and they had to open the gym for us. And we're all sitting there working out, doing dips. And, I'm kind of talking shit with Spencer and he's like, I can do 10 dips. I'm like, oh, that's nothing. I can do 25 dips. And then Clint Eastwood overhears us. And he's like, because again, at 88, he's still working out, of course, which I forgot to mention. So he's over there in the gym and he's like, 25. When I was 75, I could do 25. And so I'm like, well, get up there. Let's see how many you can do now. And he gets up and does 10 body weight dips at 88 years old. Dude's incredible.
That is amazing. That's amazing. And it's amazing to hear that, you look up to this guy, you watch his movies your whole life growing up, and he didn't disappoint you when you met him. I can't tell you how many times I've met celebrities or people that I admire growing up, and they are just not who you thought they were. So It sounds like pretty damn awesome that not only was he how you always imagined him to be, you're in the gym with the guy working out. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, exactly. He's just very, very laid back and relaxed about everything. He doesn't think of himself as famous, or maybe he's just gotten used to it since he's been famous since he was, 18. But yeah, he's got he's lived a hell of a life, and he's done a lot of cool things. I mean, he was telling us stories about, I think he was in the Army Reserves or something back in the day, and he actually survived a plane crash outside of San Francisco, and it was just him and the pilot in the plane, and he had to swim like 2 miles to shore. And a lot of people don't know that about him, but like he's actually been through some interesting stuff in his own personal life as well, outside of being a famous actor. And just, just really cool guy. Like when we were in France, in Paris, filming the train parts of the movie, we went up to Normandy, and, Clint Eastwood flew a helicopter up there and met us. Like he can fly helicopters. He does all this crazy stuff. And again, the guy was 88 at the time. I think now he's got to be 94, 95 now. But the dude's incredible. I mean, I can't say enough good things about him.
Man, I mean, these are experiences that people just don't have, Alek. I mean, not only that, like we totally glossed over your time in Afghanistan, which is like, that's a whole nother podcast, I think. But
Afghanistan was boring. We didn't do anything.
Yeah,
we were gate guards.
Well, I mean, but you've done so much in your life, and these experiences, whether it's writing a book or going on Dancing with the Stars, or not just having Clint Eastwood, make your story into a movie, you played yourself, and you went to the premieres. You had that experience of having to memorize lines and have a director say action and have a producer talk to you about like what the plan is with the promotion and what, how the movie's going to come out on DVD or Blu-ray or how it's going to stream. I mean, that's all insane, Alek. And I mean, people just don't have those experiences. I mean, it's just what an amazing life. And how old are you now? You're probably in your 30s now.
I am 30 on the dot. Yeah. So,
you're 30.
Yeah.
You're 30 on the dot. So you're only 30 years old and you've had all of these amazing experiences. And not only that, you've run for Congress twice now. How did you decide? Yeah. I have to say, being a guy that has been in the public eye since 2012, have 5 books out myself and doing like national speaking circuit, and then turn around and running for Congress, I kind of think of it the same. I kind of think of it the same way.
Yeah, even though, deal.
Yeah, I didn't get to play myself in a movie or anything cool like that. But having running for Congress and meeting the people and doing the campaigning, all that was so fun. I mean, I absolutely loved to have the opportunity to even be a servant leader or a leader for the people. But it was just everything else, like the dirty politics. And by the way, that of course is not just limited to the opposition or in our case, Democrats. I mean, Republicans are just as dirty behind the scenes. And I found that just to be generally loathsome and dishonorable. But also fundraising. I mean, people don't understand how difficult fundraising is, and they think like, even people that pay attention to politics, Alek, will think that, well, how much did the party give you? I'm like, the party doesn't really give you anything. You have to do all the fundraising yourself, and it's really difficult. It's really a grind, and I think it's part of the reason why we have so many rich, out of touch people in Congress. I mean, because of course you want that success in Washington because you want to replicate that success nationwide. But if you're super, super rich, you don't actually have to do the grind of fundraising. You can actually focus more on campaigning. But in many cases, what happens is they just spend money on TV commercials, don't do any campaigning. And because of that, they're maybe out of touch with people in their district and state. They find themselves representing a constituency in Washington they don't really know or understand. And I think that's why there's kind of a divide between many, not all, but many of the people in Washington and the rest of America.
I think part of it too is that it's one thing to raise money to get into office, but especially if you're in a safe seat, once you're in Congress for a while, you don't really have to run for re-election if you're just kind of a slam dunk district. So a lot of those people raise a lot of money from PACs and corporations and give it to the NRCC or the DCCC so that they can try to get committee appointments so they can become a more powerful congressperson, which, is still good for their district at the end of the day as well. But they spend all of their time and energy, raising money from PACs to get good committee appointments. so they can be more powerful, so they can get a better position when they leave Congress. And I think that's where a lot of career politicians in particular kind of get disconnected from their districts and for why they ran for Congress in the first place. And I think that's unfortunate. And I mean, I think that's something that I can agree with the Democrats on, is maybe we need to get some of that PAC money out of politics.
Sure. I totally agree. And I want to talk about what you're doing now, but tell me about what what was it like for you, going from basically a hero and a celebrity, and really, I don't want to say that you give it up, but if you're a Republican and you jump into the arena and you're running for office as a Republican, in many ways, you do, because the doors that were once open in Hollywood might not be anymore. I mean, I don't know if you've had that case, but everything gets just a little bit more difficult because, the left controls Hollywood. The left controls the media. The left controls our education system now. The left controls big tech. So what was the experience of running for Congress like? And tell me why you decided to even jump into the arena at all.
Well, I always joke with people that after the terrorist attack and everything, too many people liked me, so I wanted to make sure that at least half the country hated me, so I decided to get involved in politics. And, I mean, it's very true, because pretty much by default, I mean, people that otherwise would have been a huge fan of what we did all of a sudden hated me. And again, the same thing probably would have been true if I had decided to run as a Democrat. I'm sure there would have been a lot of Republicans that would have disowned me immediately. But, that's just how it is. It's very divisive these days. Even a lot of Republicans that aren't Republican enough get a lot of flack from the Republicans, which, some of it's justified, some of it's not. But regardless, politics has just gotten very divisive lately. And I came home and saw what was going on in my home district. We're very timber reliant. So seeing how mismanaged our natural resources were with these massive forest fires that we see every year, the lack of salvage logging. I mean, it's kind of a niche issue. I don't expect really a lot of people to know what I'm talking about here. But pretty much we used to have some of the richest school districts in the country because of all the timber money that was coming in, that was federal money because the timber's on federal land. And they basically stopped logging in the early 90s. And since then, it's been a pretty staggering decline over the last 30 years for this part of Oregon that's reliant on that timber economy. And so we're trying to get it back. I think we've won some lawsuits here recently, but overall, I mean, that was my main motivation. It's a federal issue, so I had to run for some sort of federal office, and Congress was the most attainable. And unfortunately, weren't able to make the cut, especially after redistricting this year. They made my district, I think, probably 5 to 8 points more Democrat when it used to be tied. And so that pretty much meant that we weren't going to win. So it was unfortunate, but that's kind of how it went down. So we'll see what happens in the future, but it's a shame. States like Oregon, I mean, again, they're not as Democrat as you would think. Even Washington State, Colorado, Oregon, it's like a lot of these states that have Democrat reputations. I mean, we are narrowly Democrat. I mean, especially in such a low population state like Oregon, it wouldn't take a lot of effort for the Republicans to change that, or for Republicans to move to the state of Oregon to flip it. But unfortunately, when the Democrats are in power, they do things like gerrymander the congressional maps. So even though we're barely a Democrat state, they get 80% of the control because they control the map drawing. They control everything in Oregon. So it's a shame.
I mean,
we're working on it.
It's so true. Alec, it's so true. When the Democrats are in power, they wield it without hesitation, and they don't take an off season, Alec. We have the same issues in Pennsylvania, and what made the issues more complicated is that the media, the moment that the Democrats gerrymandered the state, and by the way, our legislature drew the new congressional maps here, which is how it's supposed to be done as per the Constitution. But the Pennsylvania Supreme Court didn't like the map and picked another one. Who was that map drawn by? Mark Elias, who is the Democrat super attorney, And so they took PA 17, the district that I ran in Western Pennsylvania, Allegheny County, Beaver County, Butler County, and they subtly gerrymandered it to make it more democratic. But what the media just breathlessly reported that it was fair, it was even. And I'm like, you literally cut out Republican areas of the state and added like basically collar cities or collar towns around the city of Pittsburgh, which were heavily Democratic. So got rid of Republicans, you added 3 times as many Democrats, and it's like fundamentally unwinnable. And people, I think by and large, would not like those kind of tactics, but they don't know about it because the media doesn't report it. And so you end up with candidates, Republican candidates who are running in that district that think it's fair, but it's not. It's far less favorable today than what it was in 2020. And the same is true for your district. And it's just unfair for guys like you, Alek, because you should be in Washington. This country, Democrat and Republican, would be lucky to have a guy like you in Washington because I've known you for a while now. Yes, you're a conservative, you're a Republican, but you're a guy that can work with anyone to get the job done and will work with anyone. You take the title seriously of actually representing the people. And you talked about things being divisive, and I think it's unnecessarily so. Because, and by the way, I'll say this as well, like everywhere I went prior to running for office, Alek, was I got along amazing with Republicans and Democrats. You know, events, we never even talked about politics. We could get on the same page and we can get things done. And the moment that I declared for Congress, it's like 50% of the people just, you have the R after your name, they hate you. And that was jarring to me. I'm like, this is crazy. It shouldn't be like this, but it is.
Yep, it's unfortunate. And again, the media doesn't do any favors on either side. But the thing about gerrymandering, too, that a lot of people don't realize, I mean, Republicans gerrymander just as bad as Democrats. And it's a state level issue. So every state decides how they do redistricting on their own. And gerrymandering is one thing. If you want to gerrymander, that's fine. You want to put more Republicans or more Democrats in a certain district, like fine. But at least make it make geographic sense. The problem I have with gerrymandering is when they have districts that have nothing in common, or they put cities that have nothing in common with the rest of a district just to get the political outcome that they want.
Exactly.
Like, for instance, can't really see it, but this map behind me right here, this is the Cascade Mountain Range. They had this district cross an entire mountain range with no even highways to get there to pick up one little city that has more Democrats to add to this district to make it Democrat. I mean, literally no geographic sense whatsoever in making that congressional district, but they did it just so. I mean, follow mountain ranges, follow county boundaries, follow rivers, like it should make geographic sense. You should be able to pick by neighborhood in order to get the outcome that you want. I mean, we have 4 congressional districts that all go into Portland in Oregon. I mean, it's insane. It doesn't make any sense. And that's what I think.
It doesn't make any sense. Obviously, yeah. I completely agree with you. So you got to tell me, first of all, I got to have you back. There's so much more to talk about, Alek, but you got to tell me what you're up to now.
So now I'm working for these guys, the Freedom Foundation, up there too. They are an anti-public sector union nonprofit. So namely, they go after teachers' unions that we all hate. And pretty much the bottom line is, it's a nonprofit, so they can't be super political, but it's not their fault that teachers' unions only give to Democrats and grow government. So go after public sector unions, and by doing so, getting people to leave the union defunds the unions and therefore defunds the Democrat Party. So it gives Republicans everywhere a little bit more of a winning chance when the unions are involved, because the unions, public sector unions, again, control the state of Oregon, and I'm sure they have a lot of weight in Pennsylvania because we do a lot of weight in Pennsylvania. Or we do a lot of work in Pennsylvania as well.
Oh, they do. They do. And it doesn't matter, I was before I joined the military after 9/11, ROTC, I was an elementary education major, secondary education major. You'd think that would matter, having a pro school choice, pro education platform, pro educational freedom for people in the state of Pennsylvania. Teachers unions oppose it, period, end of story. And they come after you. Doesn't matter. And so I love that you're staying in the fight, man. I really do, because Alek, this country needs people like you. And I hope that you don't I mean, I hope to never see you out of the fight. I hope to see you run again. Third time's a charm, right? Just don't stop until you get in there. And by the way, you've learned so much, I'm sure, running 2 campaigns. There's nobody better suited to represent Oregon, or at least a district in Oregon, than you.
Well, I mean, you do learn a lot, and I'm sure you learned a lot your first time running too. So
lots of licks too, but yeah, whatever, I can take it.
Third time candidates, I think, have a much better chance of winning. So it's good to not give up, and we'll see what the future holds. But in the meantime, I'm happy taking a cycle off, to be honest, because I like to, I've been doing politics for quite some time, and before that, doing all the things that I've done. It's nice to kind of settle into reality for a little bit, work on my own personal life, which has kind of been neglected.
Well, take a knee, drink some water, take a break, and get back in the fight, because America needs you. I mean, not that you're out of the fight, you're still in the fight, but hopefully you run again in the future. Where can people find you?
Oh, shoot. I mean, I'm on Twitter, Alek Skarlatos. I'm on Instagram, Alek Skarlatos. I think I have 2 Facebook pages, a personal and a political, so follow the political. But yeah, if I ever do anything political in the future, I'll definitely let you know, and you can have me back on, and I'll look forward to it.
Yep. And maybe we'll cross paths on the campaign trail at some point in the future.
I almost hope not, but at the same time, it'll be fun.
All right, brother. Thanks for coming on, and we'll talk to you later, man.
Thanks for having me.
All right, everybody, that is a wrap. I hope that you enjoy my conversation with Alek Skarlatos. As always, subscribe to this podcast. Wherever you listen to podcasts, you can also subscribe to my YouTube channel or my Rumble channel, where you can enjoy exclusive video content of everything that happens on here. You can go to my website, officialseanparnell.com, where you can buy Battleground apparel. It's brand new prototype stuff that's out there right now, but we're going to be rolling out a lot of other cool designs, so stay tuned on that. And as always, thank you for giving us your time. This show is about telling incredible stories, also about celebrating just the exceptional nation that we get to call home. So thank you all again for watching. God bless you all. God bless this amazing country that we live in. Take care.